Episode 2, The Fall of Alfea. We begin on a world of icy seas. Frozen cliffs and peaks emerge from the waters beneath a cloudy sky dotted with an ice lattice. The Trix, in their dark witch forms, look out over the landscape. Darcy and Stormy stay behind, asking why Icy took them all the way out to such a small, remote moon. They'd wondered what the diamond that Politeia mentioned was, but didn't pry. They acknowledge that even though they consider each other sisters, they agreed to Icy's demand when she found them to leave their pasts behind. They don't know much about each other's pasts, to which Icy says that maybe it's time that changed. After all, with their predecessors, the ancestral witches gone, it's time they took the reins. Icy explains there's a whole ruined city beneath the waves. If they still had dark sirenics, they would be able to reach it, but now the waters are far too dangerous. Quickly, Icy spots a large white fox on a nearby shore and gives chase. The pursuit leads them to what appears to be an old palace, where the fox disappears. Stormy is confused since Icy said the city was underwater, and Icy reaffirms it is, and this isn't right. A voice calls out, greeting the Trix and saying that she'd heard so much about them, especially the Snow Princess of Diamond. Darcy uses her magic to dispel the illusion, revealing the castle to be nothing but a farce. Out from the illusion steps Selina. After introducing herself and assuring Icy that her secret is safe with her, she says that she has an offer the Trix won't be able to resist. Icy says they're through being anyone else's lackeys, but Selina is actually looking to become their pupil, hoping they'll be her mentors in witchcraft. Darcy is a bit interested, given she's very impressed by Selina's illusion magic. Icy asks why Selina is so interested in learning from them, so much so to follow them all the way out here. Selina explains that it's because they've all been wronged by the magical universe, and they all share a common enemy in the Winx, especially Bloom. We then cut to Bloom, aimlessly floating through a mysterious ruin, filled with lava and intense heat. She comes across a familiar sight, Daphne's spirit. Bloom calls out to her, but before she can reach her sister, Daphne's voice, with another deeper voice behind it, says, "You are not worthy." Daphne then vanishes within the flames, and from the lava emerge the Fire Eaters. Again, they absorb Bloom's power. She tries to flee, and sees Sky at the other end of the hall. She flies towards him, only for him to turn into Stella before vanishing into the fire as well. A mischievous laughter echoes around, and Bloom spots Selina. She rushes towards her, only for Selina to transform into Dark Bloom, now in a dark version of Enchantix. Bloom awakens, finding herself in her childhood bedroom in Gardenia. And of course it's nearly midnight because she crashed right after getting home from work. She heads downstairs to get water and a snack, finding her parents still up watching an old movie. Once Mike and Vanessa notice her, they all gather at the kitchen table to talk. Bloom feels aimless, unsure of what to do with herself. When Mike brings up Domino, Bloom is even more hesitant. She can't even figure out a direction for herself, so how could she trust herself with an entire kingdom's fate? Truth be told, she never once thought about becoming queen after saving Domino. On top of that, Ordell and Miriam did reach out, imploring her to visit for the Sparx Festival, but Bloom simply said that she'd think about it, with the intent to keep putting it off. Bloom asks her parents about Selina. Mike and Vanessa are confused, given they haven't heard that name in years. Bloom can't remember anything about her, but her parents explained that they were best friends since grade school. They'd spend all their time together, with Selina writing stories about them being a fairy and a witch, and Bloom illustrating their adventures. But one day, when Bloom was in middle school, she just stopped mentioning Selina. Mike and Vanessa tried talking about it, but Bloom would always be unresponsive, so they just assumed she didn't want to talk about it. Bloom finds this concerning. How could she forget someone who was so important to her? Why would she attack Bloom? And how did she have magic in the first place? We then cut to Alfea, where preparations for the Sparx Festival are underway. Tecna is coordinating everyone's efforts. Stella and Flora are on decor and aesthetics, and Musa and Aisha are focused on entertainment, with Roxy trying to help out here and there. Selina approaches Tecna, offering her help. She introduces herself and explains that as a fairy of the moon, she can use her illusions and reflections to help impress everyone with the festivities without having to worry about cleanup. Tecna finds this impressive, assigning her to help with Stella, which makes Selina instantly want to die. Though Stella is quite excited at this chance, as she's hoping that she could learn some useful tips on how to better utilize her lunar magic. Farragonda, meanwhile, can't help but find Selina's name familiar. She can't place it, but she decides to keep an eye on her. Roxy senses the same, and Farragonda asks her to keep an eye on things. Cutting back to Love and Pet, Bloom's shift has just ended at sunset. She's still not feeling great, scrolling yet again through social media and seeing the other Winx at Alfea, happily together and seemingly forgetting all about her, and she flashes back to her drawing. On Morgana's orders, Bloom goes to take out the garbage. It's a lot darker out back than usual, with a thick fog obscuring what little moonlight is shining down. Bloom climbs up to toss the bag in the dumpster, only to fall in at the sound of scurrying rats. Trying to deflect, she jokes about really feeling down in the dumps now, to which a disembodied voice says, "So this is what the mighty fairy of the dragon flame has reduced herself to? Self-deprecating humor?" Bloom is immediately terrified, then stops herself from transforming as Headmistress Griffin emerges from the shadows, taking a jab at how awful Bloom smells. Even the Trix's old dorm never smelt so rank, and they had an ogre. Griffin explains she's heard all about Bloom's pathetic state from Farragonda, Griffin's words, not Miss F's, and together they hatch the idea for Bloom to shake up her routine by helping arrange events for the Sparx Festival at Cloud Tower. Griffin even suggests Bloom consider graduate-level studies at Cloud Tower, as there is a lot to learn from harnessing your inner darkness, especially as a fairy who's always dealt in rainbows and sunshine. Bloom isn't sure how to respond, especially as she recalls the last time her inner darkness took hold as Dark Bloom. Annoyed, Griffin admits she must have had Bloom pegged wrong. She'd respected her steadfastness and fiery nature, fighting for what she wanted, but now Bloom just seems burnt out. That gets Bloom to challenge Griffin, saying she'd ace any class at Cloud Tower no problem. Griffin is happy to see that she's gotten that kind of response from Bloom, and so Bloom eagerly accepts the offer. Back at Alfea, Flora focuses on arranging flowers, vines, and all the usual. Of course, Princess Crystal gives sharp criticism of Flora's choices. Flora shrugs her off, making Crystal work harder at trying to get under her skin. At last, Flora stands up for herself, telling Crystal that she can handle this herself, and taking a jab that she feels for Crystal being so unhappy she has to drag others down with her. Storming off, Crystal mutters that she never wanted to attend Alfea anyway. Stella, meanwhile, insists that she and Selina take a break from setting up lights. Stella takes the chance to ask Selina about moon magic, to which Selina rolls her eyes. When Stella asks about why Selina's being so passive-aggressive, Selina is confused at first, not expecting Stella to catch on to her resentment. Changing the subject as quickly as she can, Selina conjures up an illusory mirror. She explains that while solar magic shines outward, lunar magic reflects inward. It requires a deep understanding of yourself and your inner darkness. Stella's a bit unnerved as she looks at her reflection, but thanks Selina for the tip. Selina then heads off, saying her friends are calling for her. When Roxy tries to inquire further about her being from Earth and when she got her magic, Selina explains that she got it at the same time as the other new Earth students, recently as magic began returning. As if on cue, 3 other students approach, saying they have questions about their studies. 2 of them get up in Roxy's face and whisk her away, while the third speaks to Selina about their plan. Selina tells the disguised Icy that they'll strike during the festivities that night, and they need to be patient. In the meantime, she's going to try and get a better idea of the school's layout. Selina heads to the library, finding herself alone, and so she summons the Legendarium. Making sure she's alone, she tells Acheron she thinks she's found a way into the Hall of Enchantments. With the Enchantix key she swiped from Bloom, she should be able to access it later. When Acheron asks if she's certain about allying herself with those 3 witches, Selina defends her choice, saying that the Trix's power and knowledge of dark magic will be invaluable, though Acheron comments on how his magical knowledge far surpasses anyone else's. He then asks Selina what her plan for Bloom is. Selina stutters. Acheron says that he's heard much of the Winx, even within the Legendarium world, and he wants them removed. If Selina refuses to destroy them, Acheron tells her to use the River of Oblivion spell. After all, using it on Bloom again shouldn't be too difficult. Over at Cloud Tower College for Witches, Bloom is getting the grand tour from Lucy, who's now an alumna and a teaching assistant. As they catch up, we learn that Myrta and Lucy started dating years ago and are now happily engaged. Bloom's over the moon for the both of them, but when Lucy apologizes to Bloom about Sky, Bloom immediately brushes it off and says that she's fine. Even when Lucy suggests visiting the Winx at Alfea, since Bloom keeps looking out at it in the distance, Bloom says she'd rather not bother them when they're so busy. Griffin interjects, saying that it's that kind of deflection that is so infuriating to deal with, not to mention weakening Bloom. Bloom admits that she's been feeling her powers waning, but she's not sure why. Again, she recalls her powers growing weaker back when Darkar was gathering the Codex. Griffin suggests the disentanglement, a ritual meant to help a person delve into their own psyche in order to confront their subconscious issues directly. This is done by casting the spell while a person steps into Cloud Tower's heart. It's a meditation technique Griffin often uses whenever she's stressed or unsure of herself. Bloom's a bit hesitant, but decides to go through with it. As the ritual begins and Bloom steps into Cloud Tower's heart, she finds herself on Domino, dressed in the gown from her wedding. Before she can register what's happening, Daphne, alive and well, calls out and says it's time to go. Without question, Bloom follows. They meet up with Mike, Vanessa, Oratel, and Miriam. Bloom's fathers bring her outside into the castle garden, down the aisle past all of Bloom's loved ones, including the Winx, all the way to Sky. She can't keep her eyes on him, however, as she keeps glancing over at Stella. Before Bloom can reach the altar, the ground shakes as a storm gathers, and all of Domino begins to freeze. Bloom expects to see the Trix or even the ancestral witches, but is shocked when she sees Dark Bloom again. She berates Bloom as weak and willing to settle for airheaded fantasies. Bloom tries to protect everyone else, but finds she can't transform as everyone is frozen one by one. Sky simply looks disappointedly at Bloom before disappearing. Outside, Lucy notes how intense the darkness feels, but Griffin insists that Bloom must face that darkness within if she wants to heal. Back at Alfea, the Winx check over their preparations one last time. Stella thanks Selina for all her help. When Stella admits that she wishes Bloom was here, Selina mutters that she does too, since that was part of her plan. When Stella asks what she said, Selina says it was nothing, as she's heard a lot of mixed opinions about Bloom. Stella assumes it must have been from Venomia, and that she considers slander. Selina gets visibly offended, but hides her disdain. Stella asserts that Bloom has sacrificed so much for everyone else, and that though she is reckless, impulsive, and self-righteous, she's also one of the kindest, bravest people she's ever met. Bloom is her best friend, and like the sister she's never had, and that definitely ticks Selina off. When Stella stops herself, saying she's probably rambling, she kicks herself for not talking to Bloom, only to realize that Selina has vanished when she turns back. Before she can look for her, the other Winx call Stella over. Back in the heart of Cloud Tower, Bloom watches as Dark Bloom freezes the Winx solid. Bloom asks why, to which Dark Bloom says it's not like they were going to stick around anyway. If anything, she's doing Bloom a favor, removing the thorns in her side. Bloom yells at Dark Bloom to shut up, grabbing her and sending them both falling off the cliff towards the sea far below. In the water, Dark Bloom breaks free and vanishes into the dark depths. Bloom tries to follow, then finds herself back in the strange volcanic ruin from her dream. A disembodied voice resounds, "You are not worthy." The great dragon rises from the depths and charges at Bloom. Instinctively, Bloom snaps herself awake, breaking the spell. Seeing Bloom is incredibly shaken, Griffin and Lucy take her to the infirmary. Returning to Alfea, Farragonda announces the beginning of the Sparx Festival before calling the Winx up to perform a song written by Musa, inspired by the holiday. All is magic. While the Winx perform, Selina signals the Trix. On cue, a storm rolls in as it begins to snow. The Winx are already over the theatrics, dodging as the Trix, revealing themselves, attack. Cue fight between the Winx and Trix, and thankfully, the professors and students of Alfea are here to help too. Selina, however, sneaks inside the school, and Roxy, noticing, follows. In the library, Selina finds herself at the golden gates to the Hall of Enchantments. A figure in pink, whose face we can't see, appears behind her, asking if she's really sure she wants to do this. Selina says that there's no turning back now. Before she can do anything, Roxy tells her to stop and explain herself. Unfortunately, Selina's illusion magic makes her impossible to hit, and while Roxy is distracted, Selina uses the stolen Enchantix key to open the gates. Once she enters and approaches the statue, she reads from the Legendarium about the story behind the creation of Alfea Castle. Its architect and owner was a powerful fairy named Clariel, who used the heart of Alfea to create a flying fortress housing all the magic she had accumulated. But the other fairies of the magical universe could not tolerate how brightly she shone. As such, they stole her castle, transformed it into a pathetic magic school for weaklings, and cast Clariel out. Now it's time for Clariel to take back what is rightfully hers. The evil fairy emerges from the Legendarium's pages, easily able to fend off Roxy. Selina and Clariel enter the Heart's Chamber, and Clariel says it's time to take back her castle and all of its light. Alfea begins to shake. Before anyone knows it, the school breaks from the earth and is lifted into the sky. The witches of Cloud Tower see this, and Bloom, against Griffin's orders, transforms and flies over to see what's happening. Selina emerges into the quad with Clariel, who announces that Alfea no longer belongs to Faragonda. Faragonda says that Alfea belongs to all fairies, to which Clariel responds, "Not anymore," before attacking Faragonda. She then spots the Legendarium in Selina's hands, and instantly she remembers her. Bloom arrives to help, but is still incredibly weak. She freezes up as she spots Selina, which makes her easy to incapacitate. Saying she has a way to make sure the Winx stay out of her way, Selina recites a spell from the Legendarium about Memazine and Lethe, the rivers of memory and forgetfulness. The Winx try to stop her, only to find themselves caught up in the magical golden chains, forcing them to de-transform. Selina then targets Bloom, but hesitates as Bloom repeats her name. The spell does hit Bloom, but it's clearly affecting her differently, as Bloom remains transformed. She sees flashes of her younger self in Selina in what appears to be a magical forest, along with an older fairy who vaguely resembles Faragonda. They both plead to Selina to think about what she's doing, and Selina yells back, "I'm taking what's rightfully mine." Then, the voice from Bloom's dream that told her that she wasn't worthy yells in her mind, "Domino." Finally arriving on the scene, Roxy manages to interrupt the spell, then with the help of the other fairies, tries to hold off Selina and the Trix as she tells Bloom to get herself and the Winx out of here. Bloom tries to argue back, but Roxy tells her to just go. Begrudgingly, Bloom uses her Zoomix wings, teleporting herself and the unconscious Winx away, but leaving Roxy and all of Alfea at the mercy of Selina and the Trix. As they leave, Faragonda yells for Bloom to remember Eldora. With that, all the students and faculty are overpowered and ensnared by Darcy's magic. Alfea is lost. Over on Domino, Oratel and Miriam are out in the garden fencing. It's their idea of a cute date, and a break from organizing for the Sparx Festival. And for the record, Miriam is absolutely kicking Oratel's ass. It's at that moment they feel something is off. The Winx materialize before them, and before Bloom can explain, she passes out.